Life comes with a lot of decisions, and it can be hard to know the right path sometimes. A therapist can help you map out what you really want, so you trust yourself to make great choices and feel excited about the future. BetterHelp offers convenient professional online therapy on your schedule, however you want it, by phone, chat, or video call. Let therapy be your map with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/positive today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/positive.
Is Sports Daily on Wichita's #1 sports radio, 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
All right, welcome back in, everybody. It is Sports Daily on KFH. Jacob Albrock, Tommy Castor here with you on a Monday edition, taking stock of the weekend, looking ahead as we have a very interesting day in the sports world. Talked a lot about some of the training camp latest. That was sort of a broad look. We can get to anything else. The Chiefs apparently dealing with some weather up there today. We have not yet talked a lot about the Major League Baseball trade deadline, which we will do in this hour for sure. Some of the conference realignment out there for us. If we see anything there, we will certainly let you go. Jacob Albrock, Tommy Castor here in hour number 2. Jad Chambers producing. Let's talk the Royals here, Tommy. A curious move, Nicky Lopez for Taylor Hearn. And, you see it on the surface, and you're like, well, all right. Hearn hasn't been very good. The Royals see him, he has a 14.73 in 5 outings with the Rangers and Braves. The Braves basically picked him up off the scrap heap. He got DFA'd, and the Braves pick him up, and the Royals think that, oh, man, he looks like he could be a good big lefty reliever out there. Let's go get him. They trade Nicky Lopez, and Lopez is interesting. He has dropped offensively, but he's handy. Fans kind of like him. And it's like, okay, all right. But it doesn't make the organization any better, the move, I don't think, which is what you want to see at the trade deadline. Doesn't make the future any brighter. And then you get a little more into it and you look around and, oh, lo and behold, they can save some money in this trade, right? Because Nicky Lopez is making more than Hearn. So if they swap salaries, they get to save a little bit of money here. And I don't know how you don't look at it as a cost-saving move. That's the last thing the Royals need to be interested in, is a cost-saving move. Good for Nicky Lopez that he gets to go to Atlanta. But, man, that one's just like, bleh. Like what are we doing here?
Of course, full disclosure, I'm a Braves fan, so I think the trade is great. Like I'm on board with Nicky Lopez providing depth in the infield for the Braves down the stretch. I like that a lot. But no, this is a bad trade, and I don't really know any other way to say it. This is a bad trade for the Royals in a time where the fan base is just looking for anything, any shred of competence, any shred of competitiveness, whatever. They're not getting it. And man, if the trade deadline comes and goes, and this is the only deal that the Royals make, if they don't move Scott Barlow, if they don't move Carlos Hernandez, if they don't, though, I mean, they moved Aroldis Chapman, so they did do that earlier. But man, like that, what a terrible trade that is. The other thing too, the Royals could have traded for Taylor Hearn with the Rangers for cash like a week ago. Instead, they gave up Nicky Lopez to get Taylor Hearn from the Braves. That makes no sense to me. I mean, I know it's a cost-saving move, but when the Braves traded for Taylor Hearn a week ago, they traded him for cash. The Royals could have done the same thing and kept Nicky Lopez if they really wanted Taylor Hearn, which I don't know why you would. But man, like this, it's really hard to find any shred of like a silver lining in this trade at all. It's just overall bad for the Royals.
There is some rumors, I guess, coming out of Kansas City that Lopez had become not a locker room guy or something, which, man, I just don't know how much I buy that. And if Nicky Lopez isn't a good locker room guy based on the career he's had, then maybe the locker room has a problem, right? I just it is a strange time. And I don't know, one, where's the leadership off the field? We know where it is on the field, right? We know where the leadership is. And the problem with this is, too, Tommy, the Royals, and I don't mean this tongue-in-cheek, it's just reality, finally got their first 3-game win streak of the year.
Yeah.
You had Bobby Witt Jr. with a walk-off grand slam. You've got, okay, all right. We were talking this weekend, you and I at an event, they're still drawing decent crowds and these things. But then you make a move like this, and it's man, that's not a baseball move. Nobody's going to look at that and be like, that's a good baseball move, right?
Right.
It looks like a cost-saving move. And here we go again. We're talking about stadiums and cost-saving. At what point do the Royals make a baseball decision, right? It's time to make some baseball decisions. And Aroldis Chapman's return was fine. I was happy with that one. That was that's a fringe starter that definitely has a chance to get better. I got that, understood it, made sense. They will trade Barlow. If they don't trade Barlow, run him out of town. They should have traded him 2 years ago.
Yeah.
They'll trade Barlow. I think they'll trade Hernandez. It's too much of a seller's market not to do that. So that will happen.
But I think you got to temper your expectations on what the return is going to be for those guys, right?
And that's my biggest problem.
There's nothing that has happened
Nicky
so far.
Lopez to get Taylor Hearn?
Right. And to me, doesn't that tell you that, I don't know how J.J. Piccolo is handling negotiations, if he's the worst negotiator on the planet. I don't know. But because of that trade that happened yesterday with Nicky Lopez, that gives me zero faith that the Royals are going to be able to get anything of significance in return for Barlow or Hernandez.
Well, all the industry is telling you right now through national reporters that it is a seller's market and teams are asking for a lot. So we'll see if the Royals hold to that. Barlow, Hernandez, very handy players right now that just about any team, any contender, right, could get use out of those guys. And so you have to take advantage of it. There's never been a better time to be bad than this year, right? This is as good a time to be bad as we've ever seen because the extra wild card makes all these extra players, valuable and viable and all of this stuff. And you have got to, when you have some assets like they do, and Barlow's fringy, right? He's got a bad ERA. He's sort of been hit or miss, but I think there's enough of a track record there that he's still got some value, right? But he's been sort of all or nothing here. In July, we talked about him having a nice June, a pretty nice June. But in July, let's be fair, he's given up runs in at least 2 in 3 of his last 5 appearances. So that's not good. But he's got some value. We've known he can do something in this league. They should have traded him 2 years ago. Let's look at Carlos Hernandez lately here. Carlos Hernandez, sneakily, Tommy, has become the most valuable piece probably. He's had 4 straight scoreless. Before that, he gave up a run. And that's 4 straight. So I'm just looking now at game logs. So since June 12th, Tommy, against the Reds, he has made, let me do some quick math, 12, 15, 18, 19 appearances. He's made 19 appearances since June 12th, okay? He has given up 1 run in 3 of those 19 appearances. His ERA is down to 3.50, basically. He's not really allowing a lot of base runners in that stretch either, Tommy. So 19 appearances and you allow to run 3 times? Hernandez is the piece.
Yeah.
And maybe you amplify, maybe you don't have to trade them separately. Maybe you put them together and can get that extra piece out of out of somebody's system. You got to get creative here because I do maintain, Barlow's been rocky, but there's enough there, I think, over time with Barlow to think he could be a change of scenery guy. Like, Hearn's not a change of scenery guy. Barlow's a change of scenery guy.
Yeah.
Probably. And package him with Hernandez or trade him separately. Hernandez, look, I would imagine of the names being mentioned, if you looked across baseball track record for track record, there's probably not a lot of better, right? Just statistically or just, by the meat and potatoes of it, guys than Carlos Hernandez. And, oh, by the way, he's shown over time he could be a spot starter for you too.
So here's the thing that I go back to with the bullpen for Kansas City and those two pieces that, by all accounts, everybody believes are going to be traded. John Heyman, Baseball Insider, MLB Network, tweeted about 45 minutes ago that the Atlanta Braves are looking for pitching, including back-end bullpen help. The Braves just worked with the Royals and didn't end up with Hernandez or Barlow. They traded for Nicky Lopez. So what does that tell you? Does that tell you that the Braves aren't interested in those guys? The Braves need bullpen help. Or do you think that the negotiations went so poorly that for whatever reason, I don't know if J.J. Piccolo settled on Taylor Hearn in return for Nicky Lopez, and maybe the conversation had started with the bullpen guys? I don't know. But that was you would think, a prime opportunity for the Royals to get some good prospects in return for those two relievers with the team that you're talking to about Nicky Lopez. I don't know why the trigger wasn't pulled, and it still could be. Maybe they are still talking. I don't know, or maybe they're talking with other teams.
Well,
but I feel like that's a missed opportunity.
Don't you hope that it means that they're asking too much? Because I want them to ask too much now,
sure.
Right? Like, ask too much on July 31st, but then take your best offer. And I don't think there's urgency to, like, oh, well, these teams are going to go find somebody else. Yeah, they haven't yet. Like, don't lose this game of chicken. You've got at least one piece that just about every contender needs, if not two or 1.5, right? So, yeah, play chicken. Hold on. Sit tight. Wait. Make them overpay, right? That's the goal. If you're in a seller's market, you have to make teams overpay. Now, what is overpaying for, relievers with, what? Probably not much, but it's something, right? The Royals are so thin in the farm system. Like, they just have got to retool it. And I don't think they're going to go get anybody's top, 4 or 5 prospect. But I think if you're the Royals right now, you can sit there and say, we want a top 5 prospect in your system. That's what we want. And you hold to that until hopefully some team gets desperate enough. They're like, all right, fine, do it. Let's just get it over with. We got to have it. We think we can win the World Series. There are teams out there right now that have already showed us they are desperate, right? The Angels might be the most desperate team. And I don't know what the state of the Angels bullpen is off the top of my head. The Rangers are pretty desperate, right? They've shown us that because they're going and being aggressive now. They're telling you that they're willing to go all in here. We'll see. The Royals, it comes down to, like, how much faith do you have that they'll get it right? I think that they got appropriate value for Aroldis Chapman. I was fine with that trade. And then the Nicky Lopez trade made absolutely no sense to me, other than they had a chance to save a little bit of money, which is not the optics the Royals need right now. So do I have faith they can get it? This is, I don't have any faith, and this is no offense or anything else. Like, Quatraro, maybe they're growing pains, but clearly the team is worse than it was a year ago. Like, I don't think there's any doubt about that. We're at least seeing Bobby Witt develop. But I don't really have a take yet on Piccolo. We'll find out after this trade deadline. And what I said that because you've been ready to make wholesale changes, but I said, well, let's at least see what he does at the trade deadline. The clock's ticking. Like, let's see it. The Nicky Lopez trade makes no sense to me. I don't think, or anybody else. The Aroldis Chapman trade, I thought that was a good one. So we'll see. We'll see how this pans out. About, a little more than 24 plus 7, about 30 hours left before the trade deadline, and we're going to see moves made. The Royals better get in on it.
Yeah, and I want to give some credit where credit is due, and really the only bright spot has been Bobby Witt Jr. Over the last few days or so. Of course,
he's been
the
fantastic
Royals
lately.
Yeah, they swept over the weekend, but Bobby Witt Jr. in 2 games over the weekend had 8 hits, 9 RBIs, and multiple home runs. And he's only the second Royals player to ever do that. You have to go all the way back to 1969. And a guy by the name of Ed Kirkpatrick was the last guy who had that kind of 2-game span like Bobby Witt Jr. had. The walk-off grand slam was insane. Like, I feel like that's about the only thing right now that you can really hang your hat on if you're a Royals fan and really get excited about, because the more that he develops, the more that he grows, the more that I feel like if there was a competent front office around him, that you could bring in players to come around Bobby Witt Jr. and they could all be successful and ultimately make Bobby Witt Jr. even better than what he is right now.
He has been very good lately. It's hard. I'm trying to find like a, and I don't think you can do this. It's too difficult. To find like the war over the last month or so. But either way, he's been great lately. He's been one of the better players in baseball lately, and his development has been great. Ken points out that Ryan Yarbrough, that's another bright spot. Ryan Yarbrough's been really good.
Yeah.
And Quatraro has pointed to Yarbrough. Yarbrough's, I don't know what the overall feel for Yarbrough is, but I mean, we'll take anything at this point, right? Like we're excited about anything. Yarbrough is 31 years old though. And he's put together a couple of good starts. How many good starts does he have? He has three of his last 4 starts have been good, right? And one was not very good. It was fine. 3 earned runs and 5 2/3, I suppose you'll take. And then so you go since May 7th when they put it. Is that the first start he made? I believe it is. I believe his first start came then. He's been, he's dropped his ERA down 2 full runs. He's gone at least 5 2/3. All of those were 1-run starts, except for the one I mentioned there, 3 earned. He's been all right, but he's 31 years old. So Good for Ryan Yarbrough. I'm happy for Ryan Yarbrough. I'm not sure that I'm ready to circle the wagons around Ryan Yarbrough just yet, but I'll take anything at this point. But it's the Bobby Witt Jr. year, and it's another year of his development, and we just need them to do well at the deadline to continue, because let's be real too, like the feeling around the team, as bad as they've been, has been better, right? And it's all because of Bobby Witt Jr., right? That's all it's taken for us to feel just a little bit better. It's like, okay, Bobby Witt Jr. looks really good.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. But now you gotta win the deadline. Like, you gotta win at the deadline. It's a seller's market. There aren't very many sellers. It's pretty hard to lose at the deadline, I would think, this year, right? Like, it will be hard to come out of the deadline being like, man, we got fleeced this year if you're a seller. The Royals are a seller. They've made one good trade and one that makes absolutely no sense to anybody. Okay, you got about a day and a half here to go and trade as much as you can. And there's probably more, because I didn't see Nicky Lopez getting traded. There's probably more than Hernandez and Barlow, and that's probably a part of it too. But at least Hernandez needs to get a good return. There's not going to be many guys better than him, at least based on performance, right? There are plenty of pitchers that throw harder and do that kind of stuff, but the proof is in the pudding with Hernandez this year. He's been really good out of the pen. You got to go capitalize on that when everybody needs bullpen help.
And when I say that Bobby Witt Jr. is the only player that you can really hang your hat on if you're a Royals fan, I mean, from a Stars perspective, Ryan Yarbrough.
Well,
has
when you
been
look
fine.
to the futures perspective, I think is
Michael
the biggest
Massey
thing.
has been pretty good over the last couple of weeks. So there are some slightly bright spots. Carlos Hernandez is one of them too in the bullpen. But yeah, I mean, as far as a building block, a foundation to build a team around, clearly Bobby Witt Jr. And so I'm with you. Winning the deadline, and even just the optics around winning the deadline, it's so crucial for the Royals. Even if they come out and, and I don't even know how you do this. If you try to win the PR battle in it, and you're trading away these relievers, and I don't know how you shift the narrative to make it seem like you're really, playing hardball and trying to get the best return for these guys. They got to win the deadline. They got to have the fan base look and say, okay, they at least did something to try to set this franchise up to be in a little bit of a better spot next season and beyond than they are right now.
and when the deadline is a relative term. When the deadline means you just made trades that make sense, right? That trade made sense. The Nicky Lopez trade, I can't make sense of it. That's my problem now. I don't mind trading Nicky Lopez, and I like Nicky Lopez. I think he's a handy player and very interesting in what he does. He's never going to I feel like, the baseball nerds, Tommy, and I always need to preface, I mean that by like real stats-driven baseball people are never going to like Nicky Lopez. But if you watch baseball and you're a little more old school, like, you know who to love Nicky Lopez? Ned Yost, right? Like, Ned Yost would love Nicky Lopez, I think. So, but that has value, and it has value when he's not an everyday starter. And I think there was a time where he looked like maybe he would be an everyday starter. I don't think that's the case anymore, but for a team like the Braves, where if you have any kind of injury, you'll be fine defensively, and you'll have a guy that can handle himself at the plate that will be okay. Is Vinny Pasquantino toast? We're being asked on the video stream. I don't think so. Not that I've heard. I think he's fine. He's got to go.
Yeah,
shoulder surgery is always a little frightening,
sure.
But he'll be all right starting next year. He should be ready to go next year. I mean, you haven't heard anything about like
no.
that.
I think he's. I mean, clearly season ending, right? And you're going to have some rehab in that, and it's a torn labrum, and but I mean, players come back from that sort of thing all the time. So, hopefully ready to go by the start of the year, because you and I have said before that outside of Bobby Witt Jr., Vinny Pasquantino may be the only other position player, at least, that you feel like could be a solid contributor
there.
For sure,
right?
Yeah.
Like guys to that will be the guys that are on the tickets, right? The guys that are banners are hanging up around the stadium and that kind of thing. Yeah, those are the two guys. No, I think Vinny Pasquantino, nothing's changed, at least as far as what I've seen. All right, let's take a quick break. We'll come back. More Sports Daily. Let's just have our wish list for the Big 12 as everything appears to be on the table in conference realignment. What is a best case scenario? What would we prefer? Not what do we think's going to happen or anything like that. Like, what's a best, coolest, strongest case scenario for the league? We'll get into that as we look around that world as we make our way through this Monday edition of Sports Daily. It's all Brockton Caster. On the way out here, Jad, let's give away some WinSurge vouchers. Tommy and I were at a WinSurge game, the Odyssey event here with our coworkers. A lot of fun. If you want to get out there to see a game of your choice, we'll give away 4 vouchers right now at 869-1240 to our first caller. Courtesy of us here at Sports Daily and KFH, we'll send you to a WinSurge game of your choice. 4 vouchers for the first caller at 869-1240. On our way out, we'll come back. Conference realignment talk next on Sports Daily. All right, welcome back, everybody. Sports Daily here. Let's talk conference realignments. Jacob Albrock, Tommy Caster here on this Monday edition. It is a crazy time because you get lots of rumors, lots of insiders, lots of people on social media. There's people that are probably too defensive and not just more like, this is actual information that I've heard, blah, blah, blah. The Big 12 we know has added Colorado. It certainly seems like panic has set in the Pac-12. I don't think the media deal is there. Haven't thought it. I think their best play may honestly be to wait a little while, but I don't think teams are going to want to do that. So the Pac-12's in big trouble here. If you're the Big 12, Tommy, and we have all of the different rumors that have been out there, what do you think is the best case scenario for the Big 12? Is it Oregon and Washington, even though Brett McMurphy pointed out over the weekend, who's been all over this, it's sort of like, yeah, you can add them, but as soon as the Big 10 comes calling, they're going to leave, which I get that, right? So, is it those teams plus Arizona? Is UConn in the mix? Like, do you wait for the ACC? What is a best case scenario for you for the Big 12 as we move forward here?
Well, it's kind of a non-answer to your question. I think they're already there. I mean, honestly, wherever you go from here on out, you are adding strength to a conference that there have been questions for a long time about how stable they would be long-term. And those questions are largely gone now. So I don't want to say that it's all gravy because you've got teams that are clearly more valuable than others that are still potentially out there. Universities, more valuable than others. I think Arizona, in my mind, I said it earlier, I think they are the next to go. And I think that they are a really good fit for the Big 12. You've got an opportunity to have, Tucson is a great college town. And I've even heard people on social media talking about you could have a rivalry between Arizona and Texas Tech and Tucson and Lubbock and, not that far away from each other, potentially being on the table. And then you've got, they're a big basketball school for sure, a heritage basketball program, adding to the already, large basketball prestige in the Big 12 would be beneficial also. So I think Arizona is the next to go. I like Oregon and Washington. I like their profiles. But yeah, I mean, Brett McMurphy is onto something where he says that, the Big 10, as soon as they come calling, and they probably will come calling at some point for Oregon and Washington, they're probably going to jump ship. So maybe in the short term, that's great. I don't know what that looks like long term. I would be content with Arizona, and then you call it good.
So Tucson to Lubbock, by the way, is just a quick look, is 10 hours. So I don't know what that rivalry would be.
Not that far.
It's an easy flight. Phoenix,
yeah.
That's the thing. That's why I like Arizona. Like, geographically, it's great. I think that, their football profile would raise in the Big 12. Their basketball doesn't need to, but it's a place people would want to go, right? Like, there's no doubt about that. Arizona for sure is in for me. I don't know how to handle Oregon and Washington. I don't know how you handle the Big Ten component of that, and I don't know if you're Oregon and Washington what you do here. They're sort of like San Diego State was to the Mountain West, where it's like, yeah, we want to go. We don't really have an option now, so we're just going to hang tight. Oregon and Washington will eventually land somewhere, right? Like, they're not in danger like Oregon State or Washington State of not landing anywhere. They'll have a home somewhere. And in the short term, even if it's in the Pac-12 with a bad buyout or whatever, they're going to have a place, like if you're Oregon, and really Washington probably deserves to, you say this too, because they've been in the CFP. Like, they're going to be able to get into the CFP playing out of the Pac-12.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure their best option isn't to wait for the Big Ten if they have any indication the Big Ten is interested. That's what I don't know about the Big 12. I mean, I'd love to have them too. Would I love to have them only in the short term? The only reason I think that there's risk in that is that if they join the Big 12 and then left for the Big 10, that's a perceived weakness now, right? Like, you've now perceived weakness that you're getting poached again. I don't know that the Big 12 ever wants to be in the business of being poached again. So can you get Oregon and Washington? Can you convince them that, listen, here's what we're doing? And as I said last week, this isn't about the current TV deal, which is good, right? It's fine. It's about the next TV deal in 4 or 5 years from now. Or what is it, 5 or 6 years from now? That's where we really think we're going to be able to capitalize. And is the Big 12 going to be the third best league when the dust settles on this? When the ACC ultimately gets poached, right? Is the Big 12 going to be in a position here to be in there? Or if you're Oregon and Washington, do you say, I don't know what assurances you can get. I just don't know. And there's obvious risk in adding them. And so I'm not sure that what the best answer is there.
I mean, I think on paper, Oregon and Washington, like it works on paper, but I mean, I think there are too many unknowns. And, if they've got that desire to go to the Big Ten, that's pretty risky on the part of Brett Yormark. And while Yormark has been very aggressive, he also has not taken big time risks either. Like, he's been very strategic in the moves that he's made. And so I'm not sure that Oregon and Washington, knowing that risk exists, would really be the best bet for them.
Well, it's impossible unless you have part of the conversations. It's just impossible to know. And I don't think you can negotiate different buyouts for different schools. I don't think you can do that. So you have to. It's just, there's a lot of risk there, but there's upside too, because here's the reality. I don't know when the Big Ten would like to expand. My guess is it would be closer to when they think they can also go after ACC schools. So let's say it's 3 years from now at minimum. Let's say you add Washington and Oregon, and you've got them for 3 years at least, right? if you could get that, I do think there could be value in increasing that brand, increasing that league, and getting closer to that next renegotiation window, right? Because at that point, you think if your brand is, and I think this is the goal for Yormark. I think he's trying to get closer to the other two with the next deal. And so if they come in and it's all fine and dandy and you're sitting here, maybe there isn't a need at that point to leave because you're in a great place. And so that's a part of it too. Like how quickly, like if you guys are going to leave, how quickly is that going to happen? And I don't know how you guess that if you're the Big 12, because at any point the Big 10 could expand it, right? But it's like, I don't know what their rules are on expansion with this new deal that they've done. Can they, like the Big 12, just add members that get full value? That's something to consider too. I don't know the answer to that. That's not a hypothetical question. That's a real question. I have no idea. I know it's that way in the Big 12. I think if you think you can have them for at least 3 or 4 years, you probably do it if you can, because it will help you down the road. Because at that point, too, at some point the ACC is going to get poached, and if they're in there, then you can start to shop around there just a little bit. And there is some perception that it will end up being the ACC versus the Big 12 as who's going to become that third. Well, the Big 12 right now has an opportunity to get stronger. The ACC, I don't think, can really do anything right now. So take advantage if you can. Here's the school I think that would be a shoe-in, no doubt about it. We got to get this school, is Utah. Utah is a team, I would be aggressive with Utah. And they've been pretty steadfast. And I don't know why that is. I don't know if it's because they were, non-Power 5 for so long and then they finally get into the Pac-12. I don't know what it is about the resistance there, but Utah makes so dang much sense to me as far as like fitting the vibe of the Big 12. Utah fits it, right? Like it fits.
But hasn't Utah been very vocal in their support of the Pac-12?
Yes.
That's the difference between like in Arizona and a Utah.
Yeah,
Arizona's been very diplomatic.
Bygones here. Like who cares?
I just don't know. I'm not saying that the Big 12 doesn't pursue them because of the words they've used. I'm just saying I think it's legitimate that Utah's like, we don't want to do the Big 12. And I don't know. Well, I don't know. I mean, really, what's the other option? Like, hang on in the Pac-12,
right?
And I mean, because really, at the end of the day, the Pac-12 is probably going to end up as a glorified version of the Mountain West, right? Like, you're going to have Fresno State and Boise State, and alongside Washington State and Oregon State and Stanford and Cal. By the way, think about how big of a cliff Stanford has fallen off from. And I know that there are so many other things that are important at Stanford outside of athletics, but it wasn't that long ago that Jim Harbaugh is the coach at Stanford and they're in the national spotlight. And now it's like nobody wants them, like they're on that same level as Cal and Washington State and Oregon State. Like it's kind of interesting.
I would tell you that I would take Stanford. Just by the way, if I had like a wish list of things that could matter for the Big 12, I would take Stanford. I would take Utah. I would actually take UConn, by the way. And I know that a lot of Big 12, like, diehard writers and forever beat writers have been anti-UConn. I would actually take UConn, and I would incur the risk. One, I would try to take them as a less expensive member. And then at the next negotiation, if they can get their football program up to snuff, maybe they become but I want UConn basketball. I want everything about UConn basketball. And by the way, if you're UConn, the difference in being a partial paid member, like you don't get as much as everybody else versus the Big East, is still better, right? And they can always go back, right? We know that now.
Yeah.
They can, and if the Big East doesn't want them, they can go back to the American, they can go back to the Atlantic 10, they can go back wherever they want.
I mentioned this to you over the weekend. And I know I think you kind of shot it down when I texted it to you, but man, I think that if I'm the Pac-12 and if I'm the ACC, why not merge at this point?
You do.
I mean, like, why not have these phone calls? Because the ACC is going to get poached. The Pac-12 has already been poached and the Big 12 is not going anywhere. Why not join forces together and be like, look, for our own survivals, like, let's just come together. And you know what? The last couple of years, there've been these like, ridiculous fake alliances,
scheduling
that literally
alliances.
They mean nothing.
How'd that work out for the Pac-12 and Big Ten?
It means not. Like, I'm not talking about a fake, stupid alliance. I'm talking about let's merge. Let's save ourselves and come together. We can have a coast-to-coast conference. I don't know why why that's not in the discussion.
That's what the Pac-12 should have done with the Big 12, by the way.
Absolutely.
It won't happen because they're both thinking about their own survival, right? Like, they're not thinking about a collective survival. And the ACC, by the way, probably and rightfully so, feels like when we get a chance to expand, we're going to have a chance to be just like the Big 12 and go get better, right? The Pac-12 doesn't feel that way right now to me. So the ACC is stuck in this waiting game to some degree. I agree with you. That is the best answer for those two leagues to do that. I just don't think they're going to. There's nothing historically now with several opportunities for leagues to do this that would tell you they would do it. You know, the Big 12, I don't think would want that right now. I mean, I don't think I would want an all-out merger anymore if I'm the Big 12. I would rather poach the teams that I want. And I think Arizona and Utah are there. I would take Arizona. I would take Utah. I would take Washington. I would take Oregon. I think Stanford still fits. I don't know enough about Arizona State. I don't think so. And I would take UConn as a less than full member, just because I want that basketball brand and I want that geographic region on the table here. And then when time comes for the ACC, having UConn, having West Virginia, having Cincinnati makes a little more sense if you want to go just a little bit more east. Hey, Pitt, you know, what are you doing, Pitt? You want to renew that rivalry with West Virginia? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
where's Memphis at? I mean, Memphis could be another possibility where you've got a profile there that might work.
I don't know why the Big 12 didn't go after Memphis the first time. Memphis is going to have an opportunity. Memphis, here's a prediction for you. Memphis will play in the Pac-12, right, alongside SMU at some point. That's not based on anything other than for whatever reason, I don't think the Big 12 wants Memphis because they could have had him the first time and they didn't take him. Now, that was before. No, that wasn't before Yormark, or was it? That was before Yormark. Yeah. So maybe he sees the value in their basketball program, and their football program's been pretty good. But I think you still shoot big here, and people get worried about too many teams. I'd take 20. I think you can take 24 because you can just split it 12 and 12, 10 and 10. You don't have to play the other side. I mean, you can play one or two teams from the other side maybe, but you just play conference championship game. In basketball, you don't get to play round robin, unfortunately. That's okay. Like, I don't think there's any issue with going 20 to 24 because you can split it in half and just basically have two leagues. Like, go for that. Because it lets you play games all over the radar. TVs, like if I'm a TV executive and I get that many options at games in different windows, that's inventory, man. Like, that's okay to me. You got to make it worth my time. Like, I don't want, no offense to Oregon State, Washington State, but if you're giving me late night windows that feature Stanford games or, Arizona that has value. That for sure has value. Oregon and Washington certainly would. It's a time for the Big 12 to be aggressive. Big 12's in a position of power here, maybe even more than we thought they were. I think they're even in a better position than we would have said they could have been in a month ago. And here we go. Like, all the rumors are out there now. Colorado, were they the domino? We'll find out. I think in the next 2 weeks, maybe even sooner than that. 869-1240, congratulations to Kevin, who will check out a little Wind Surge baseball, courtesy of us here at Sports Daily. It's all Barkton Caster, Jed Chambers producing. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back. Sports Daily, trade deadline coming. Justin Verlander, another big name who may be on the block, says, quote, I think it largely depends on how the organization views next year. I think trading Max was a tough sign. Trying to look back at it, it happened this year, committed to win a championship here, but if the organization decides that that's not the direction they think is the best fit, then yeah, he'd be more open to it. Verlander's going to get traded. He's been better than Scherzer through 95 innings this year. I think you go right back to the well if you're the Rangers, right? Like, there are a lot of teams that would be interested in Verlander. He's going to get moved, don't you think, Tommy? Like, he's going to be gone.
Yeah, and it sounds like the Dodgers are probably the big fit for Justin Verlander. The Mets need pitching. Their prospects that they have that they're really high on are all position players. They need young pitching that they can develop, and the Dodgers have a ton of it. And the Dodgers are looking for a starter, maybe in the back end of the rotation that can get them down the stretch in the playoff hunt. That makes sense. And if Verlander is willing to go to LA, then I think that that's the trade that we're probably going to see. I know that the Astros were linked to him also, but I think the Dodgers are probably the best fit for the Mets to make a trade for Verlander with.
Yeah, I think so too. I hope not, but it does make sense because they'll be. Yeah, it's fine. The Mets. I'm telling you, Tommy. Like, I know Mets fans are frustrated that didn't work out this year. They're going to come out of this and they're going to reload their system and they're just going to be able to go spend a bunch of money again in the offseason. Like, it didn't work with Scherzer and Verlander, but you just so happen to like fall into having maybe the two most valuable assets that ended up being out there. Like, that's the advantage that big teams have over small teams. It's crazy, and they can just eat money to get a better prospect and like all this stuff that they can do that other teams just can't do. Man, it's not fair, but whatever. Another note here: Dalvin Cook leaves New York without a deal. We've been paying close attention to that only because we're so fond of and, have such interest in Breece Hall, who's coming off an injury, the Northwest grad, the Iowa State great. But no Dalvin Cook there yet to the Jets. Maybe that I don't know. I don't know, by the way, too, either when we say this, like, I don't know what the best thing for Breece Hall is. I just don't want him to get limited. I was so disappointed. He was off to such a great start last year. I don't want Dalvin Cook to come in there and take away carries that could be Breece Hall's. But interesting that, here's another running back who, like when we're talking about Dalvin Cook and Jonathan Taylor, like they're not even close to the same value, but he just can't get what he wants out there on the open market.
It's really difficult because you've seen what Dalvin Cook has done throughout the course of his career, and he's kind of going on this tour. He went to the Patriots. He spent some time with the Jets, went to training camp for a day with the Jets and kind of just watched what they were doing. And I know that he's making these different visits and trying to figure out the best fit for him. But man, if there was a solid financial offer from any team, he would have taken it by now. So I think they're in a position where it's like, look, we're going to do, like, I'm going to go where I feel the most valued, and I'm not going to make a ton of money more than likely. But if the Jets feel like they want me and they're, I guess willing to come fairly close to what I want, it makes sense.
How much better does Dalvin Cook make the Jets? I mean, for real. Like, how much better right now is Dalvin Cook than Michael Carter? I don't think it's as much of a fit as everybody else does because they have Breece Hall there and a secondary option. If I'm the Jets, and Jonathan Taylor doesn't make sense either. I just don't know what Dalvin Cook gives them other than experience at the position and maybe a safety net to Breece Hall. I mean, it makes some sense. It doesn't make as much sense as Miami does, though. If you're the Dolphins, by the way, aren't you the team that needs to be calling the Colts right now and saying, hey, let's make a Jonathan Taylor deal done right now? If Jonathan Taylor played for the Dolphins, and I haven't seen that rumored, by the way, I just, like, in my head, that's who I keep thinking of, the Dolphins or the Bills. And the Bills have James Cook, Dalvin's brother, ironically. But the Dolphins especially, don't you do that? I mean, how much better and more of a contender would you think of the Dolphins if they had Jonathan Taylor?
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, that absolutely increases your chances of not only winning that division, but at that point, I think you're inserted into the conversation to win the conference.
I do too. I would get super aggressive on that if I were the Dolphins. And the Colts, Jim Irsay, he was stubborn with Jeff Saturday, maybe just as stubborn, and say, absolutely not, we're not losing this PR battle. 869-1240. I think that gets us through the headlines of the day. It's been a strange day. There's all kinds of stuff.
Toppers Plus Truck Accessories has moved to a new location at 333 Northwest Street.